Mary, the sister of the King, was welcomed by Major General the Honorable P.J. Montague when she arrived at Wellington Barracks. After meeting Major Alice Sorby, senior C.W.A.C. staff officer, the Princess Royal inspected a detachment of the Canadian Women's Army Corps. Accompanying her was Chief Comptroller Jean Knox, director of the British ATS. The occasion was a ceremonial parade to celebrate the second anniversary of the forming of the Canadian Women's Army Corps. On this London parade ground, famous for its associations with British Guard regiments, more than 400 rain-soaked quacks showed the quality of the overseas companies. The girls marched past before a distinguished group which included the Right Honorable Vincent Massey, Major General G.S. Vanier, Lieutenant General E.W. Sansom, and Brigadiers Annie Rogers, J.H. McQueen, and E.G. Weeks. Faultless marching bore testimony to the smartness of the girls' training which for the most part is carried out after duty. Most of the quacks are employed in office and administrative jobs, releasing men for field units. In its 2 years' existence, the C.W.A.C. has indeed proved itself a vital cog in Canada's war machine. Royalty came again to Canadians when the King and Queen, with the Princesses Elizabeth and Margaret Rose, paid a surprise visit to 2 units of an armored division. First, they inspected men of the 5th Light Anti-Aircraft Regiment, R.C.A., who, despite the wind and the rain, made a fine show. Then the royal party visited the Irish Regiment of Canada, one of the few Irish units to wear the kilt. The inspection of the 2 units was very brief and informal, but it left a long-lasting impression of the dignity and gracious charm of our royal family. Artillerymen are traditionally smart on parade, and the gunners of the Canadian Artillery Reinforcement Units were no exception when they put on a demonstration of training for Major General Alexander, DSO, Inspector General, on a visit from Canada. A feature of the march past was a troop consisting entirely of reinforcement officers. General Alexander made a thorough inspection of all forms of training, seeing for himself the high standard reached. Highlight of the day was a demonstration of crash action put on by the 13th Field Battery under command of Major Lucy. The guns were brought up and made ready for action in a matter of minutes. Just as quickly, the battery moved off again. Speed, sureness, and mobility. These are the factors that paid rich dividends in the hills of Sicily and Italy. History was made in Sicily when 4 battalions of a famous regiment held a reunion. It was a get-together of the Seaforth Highlanders, 3 British battalions, and the Seaforths of Canada. The sports stadium in Catania echoed to the music of the massed pipe bands, a striking symbol of the capture of the toughest town on the island. It was a significant occasion. 4 battalions had fought side by side in the same battlefield, cherishing the same traditions and all adding their bit to a glorious regimental history. The mules, who played such a big part in the Sicily campaign, had their day at the races. Some of them didn't seem very interested in the proceedings, but at least the jockeys took their job seriously and managed to dress the part. While the bookies did a roaring business. And so the great Donkey Derby got off to a flying start. Well, maybe not exactly flying. The winner! The officers had a Donkey Derby of their own. By this time, the mules were getting tired of it all and didn't have their hearts in their work. Perhaps a carrot on a stick might have helped. To finish the program, there was a real Wild West horse race. In fact, one of the horses was a little too wild. General Montgomery paid another visit to his Canadian troops during the lull between the Sicily cleanup and the invasion of Italy. He congratulated them on their fine performance in tough mountain country and warned them that plenty of hard fighting lay ahead, all of which made a lot of Canadians pretty happy. Another visitor to the 1st Division at this time was General McNaughton. He brought with him from England the congratulations and good wishes of the rest of the Canadian Army. He talked to officers and men informally, gathering first-hand impressions of the bitter fighting which had taken place. And his words were a real inspiration to the men who were soon to set foot on the European mainland. While units rested and reformed their ranks, commanders and staff officers were hard at work planning the next phase of the Mediterranean operation. Behind lay Sicily, a sweeping triumph. Ahead lay Italy and the unknown. A 3-mile stretch of water separated the invading army from the so-called Fortress of Europe, and the time had come for that fortress to be breached. The invaders got ready. Troops in their thousands moved up to embarkation points. The spot was set to the powder keg of Europe with a typical Montgomery night barrage. And in the misty dawn of September the 3rd, 1943, hundreds of landing craft crossed the narrow straits of Messina. Hitler's vaunted fortress was to be put to the test of battle. At Reggio de Calabria, Gallico Marina, San Giovanni, and Silla, British and Canadian troops of the 8th Army went ashore and headed inland. In Sicily, across the straits, as the day wore on, more and more men were embarked. Vehicles, tanks, guns, carriers, and other heavy equipment were also loaded on the landing craft. The short trip across to the Italian shore was a pleasant ferry crossing. There was practically no opposition from the defenders in the hills of Calabria. Among the early arrivals was General Montgomery, come to inspect for himself the various bridgeheads. A demolished bridge was quickly restored to use as Royal Canadian Engineers cleared the way and opened the roads to the heavy stream of military traffic. Men of the Carleton and Yorks captured the first airport in Italy, just outside Reggio de Calabria. 1 week after the landings, the capitulation of Italy was announced. A British and American force landed farther north at Salerno and encountered stiff German resistance. The 8th pushed on to its relief. So the first part of the Italian campaign became a chase, a test of mobility. And the 8th came through nobly, leaving behind not a trail of destruction, but a spirit of fiesta.